We're going to study real conditionals in English. Conditional sentences are very important because we use them to talk about situations, results, consequences, and possibilities. In English, there are two big groups of conditionals, real conditionals and unreal conditionals. Real conditionals describe situations that are real, possible, or generally true. Unreal conditionals describe imaginary or impossible situations. Today, we are going to focus only on the real conditionals, which are the easiest and most common. There are two types, the zero conditional and the first conditional. Let's begin with the zero conditional. We use the zero conditional to talk about things that are always true, things that happen regularly, scientific facts, habits, or general truths. The structure is very important. We usually use if, when, or unless, plus present tense, present tense. For example, if you heat water to 100 degrees, it boils. This is a scientific fact, so both verbs are in the present simple. We can also change the order of the clauses. For example, water boils if you heat it to 100 degrees. Both sentences mean the same thing, but remember one important punctuation rule. If the sentence starts with if, when, or unless, we normally use a comma after the first clause. If the conditional clause comes second, we usually do not use a comma. We often use the zero conditional for habits and routines too. For example, when I have free time, I go hiking. Or, my brother feels cold if the weather is freezing. These are situations that happen regularly. We can also use modal verbs or imperatives in the result clause. For example, if you play with fire, you may get burned. Or if you arrive late, go straight to class. In these examples, the first clause is still in the present tense, but the result clause uses a modal or an imperative. Now let's look at the word unless, which is very common in conditionals. Unless means if not. For example, plants die unless you give them water. This means plants die if you don't give them water. Another example could be, I don't go outside unless the weather is fine. Now let's move to the first conditional. We use the first conditional to talk about real future possibilities. These are situations that are possible in the future, and we imagine the consequence if something happens. The structure is if plus present tense, will plus verb. For example, if it rains, I will stay at home. Notice something very important. We do not use will after if. We say if it rains, not if it will rain. This is one of the most common mistakes students make. The first conditional connects a present or future situation with a possible future result. For example, if the weather is freezing tomorrow, the roads will be icy. Or if there is a flood, many people might lose their homes. These situations are possible, not imaginary. We can also use other modal verbs like can, could, or might in the result clause. For example, if I finish work early, I might go for a walk, or if the weather is clear, we can go to the beach. Another important point is that the if clause describes the condition or choice, while the result clause describes the consequence. For example, if you study hard, you will pass the exam. Here, studying hard is the condition, and passing the exam is the possible consequence. We can also imagine the opposite idea. If you don't study hard, you could fail. Let's use some weather vocabulary to make this more practical. You can say, if there is lightning, stay inside the house. Or, when the weather is humid, I feel tired. Another example could be, if the temperature reaches 0, the lake will freeze. These are all natural examples of real conditionals. So, to finish, remember this. The zero conditional is used for general truths, habits, and things that always happen, and it usually uses present tense in both clauses. The first conditional is used for real future possibilities, and it uses present tense after if and future tense in the result clause.